Hi, I'm Mike Morrell, and sitting here on the couch with me is Paul Young. Paul, as you might know, is the author of the 18 million best-selling novel that I like to call a spirituality adventure novel, The Shack. And
hey, that's a better genre than anybody else I've heard of come up with.
All right, excellent. Yeah. You can use that.
Everybody is confused. So, what is this thing?
Genre-defying in some ways. Well, Paul's continuing the trend with Crossroads, which just came out officially this weekend, right?
Actually, 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah, on the 13th.
Hot off the presses. What strikes me as I'm moving through this is I don't really remember a lot in The Shack about what Mackenzie's vocation is, but you know, what I know of your own story as a person of humble means and beginnings.
Lots of vocations.
yes. And you've had, and now there's been this sort of runaway resonance with people with The Shack. And I'm wondering, you know, in a way that art imitates life, if Tony's character, Tony is a person who has it all, and he got it all, materially speaking, through kind of ruthless means. And not saying that you've gotten anything through ruthless means, but I'm wondering, is this in some ways your response to the shadow side of success and the things that you've seen now that you've been operating in this other level?
That's a good question, and the simple answer is no.
Wow.
But see,
shot down.
Amongst all my vocations, I actually was involved in quite a bit of business and venture capital stuff. I was a vice president of operations for a property management development company. Owned an insurance agency, and I've got a lot of friends in business. Mm-hmm. Some of the autobiographical stuff for Tony would be, you know, self-centeredness, arrogance, not thinking about other people, you know, which I all identify with looking back at my history. And then building him a little bit out of people that I've known in business, as well as, you know, the proclivity of such persons to put their foot on the gas and just go tearing down the straightaways without any thought for anybody but themselves.
Yeah.
And I wanted a guy that wasn't nice or likable, and that is fairly, fairly common. There's a lot of folks that are just pedal to the metal, not thinking, you know. And even if you read the newspapers of the last few days, you can see that we've got another person that was like that, you know, where it got exposed what was going on really in the shadowlands of their heart, as it were. Yeah.
What happens to Tony, without giving away spoilers in the plot? What is going on within his soul in this?
And I think the metaphor works really well at that point, and that's crossroads. Is that in our lives we will come to deal with crossroads, so whether it's a health issue or the death of someone close to us, or the exposure of an addiction or an affair, or the dark side, you know. There's just a lot of relational things that happen that are crossroads. Marriage is a crossroad, you know, because you have to actually deal with somebody else at the intersection, right? When you're on the straightaways, you're not thinking about that. And the crossroads are where everything happens. So Tony doesn't ask for a particular crossroads, but runs smack into one, and it stops him. And now he has an invitation to actually begin to see how his choices have rippled not only through his own soul, but through the soul of others. And that's where the adventure takes off.
One of the things about, I guess, God or the divine that he's realizing, that's gentling him into completing his journey, or is it gentle?
Some of it's not so gentle, and that's true with crossroads generally speaking. To come up to a stop is sometimes a slamming of the brakes, and so it's not always a gentle process, and it's not for Tony. What I try to do is, you know, in The Shack I've got a guy that's in the middle of his life, trying to work out his great sadness, and it happens during. What I wanted to do with Tony is catch him in the space that is between life and death. And I've had lots of conversations over the last few years about that kind of space. And third culture kid, I grew up overseas, and so I've got stories from other cultural experiences with that space. And we don't know a lot about it. Lewis and was very clear that, when he was doing the Great Divorce and playing with that space, that's what he was doing. He wasn't trying to say this is theology and accurate. He was saying we've just got a lot of space here that we can explore a little bit as a possibility, and that space actually opens up some really cool things that you can do. And so I just played in that space.
One of those spacious places that I think readers really resonated with in The Shack was the idea of God as Trinity, and a rather unlikely Trinity at that. Yeah. Can readers in Crossroads expect a similarly unexpected appearance of God?
Sure. Yeah. And the Crossroads is full of surprises, different kinds of surprises. But
no old white man with a beard shows
no,
up?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's going to take me a long time to get back to that imagery.
Okay.
That imagery just didn't do it very well for me. And so there is a different way of having that dialogue. What I did with Crossroads, and I think I did it better than I did with The Shack, was embedded the process inside relationship. There's a lot more character development. There's other characters in the storyline that are really essential to it, and essential to the potential transformation in Tony's heart. Yeah, I just don't see God healing a lot of us independent of relationship. I think it's buried inside that. The tension of relationship and the ordinariness of relationship and the challenge of it, and I think those of us who would have an honest conversation about our marriages, I think we would all talk about how much that was a crossroads and how much that was a challenge to our self-centeredness and our challenge. Children do the same thing. It's one of the things that's cool about being a grandfather, because hopefully by the time you're a grandfather, your kids beat the snot out of your self-centeredness, right? So now when
it's already started,
it's like
so.
The answer is yes. What was the question, right? With your kids, the answer was no. What's the question? And so but again, it's inside the tensions of relationship and the beauty and wonder of relationship that the process of transformation happens, and that's where I went more with Tony, and I juxtaposed him against some relationships that he would have never chosen.
Right? I think that a lot of people philosophically bang up against deterministic visions of both life, that there are these inevitable things, and deterministic visions of God. And it sounds like you're espousing a more relational vision for both human life as well as divine life.
I think the affective side of reality has way more power than the intellectual side, right? It's just like a guy I know wrote a book on hermeneutics, how to interpret scripture, and he asked me to read it, and I said I did, and then I said, good. It's good. You got all the basic stuff, but you left out the really significant elements of what empowers hermeneutics. He said, like what? I said, like job security. I said, job security affects, interpretation of scripture almost more than anything that I know. How about peer recognition? Or we've never done it this way before. We can't do it this way now. So those are affective realities,
right,
that have incredible power, and we can cut ourselves off at the neck, and we can think noble thoughts and espouse intellectual rationalism and all that. It's a crock. For the most part, it's all coming from damage that's in the heart in one sense or another, or we're covering for it, or whatever. The affective side, the relational side of reality has way more impact than we can begin to understand. It's way more profound in its depth and intricacy.
Well, thank you, Paul. The book is Crossroads. Paul is doing a nationwide book signing tour right now. We'll put the link up on the video. Be sure to check him out in a city near you if you can.